Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to jump right into some ancient stories from the book of Genesis. We're here to unpack a really foundational story about struggle, identity, and, believe it or not, law. We're going to see how one man's dramatic, all-night fight literally shaped a people's entire understanding of God and the rules they live by.
Okay, let's just drop right into the middle of the action with this amazing line. You have a man, Jacob, who's totally alone in the dead of night. And he's locked in this bizarre physical fight with something. He's exhausted, he's been injured, but he flat out refuses to let go until he gets a blessing. I mean, it's just an incredible scene. So let's really dig in and figure out what on earth is going on here. And I know, it might sound kind of weird, right? But this one single dramatic moment is actually the key to everything we're looking at today. This is where the human and the divine literally collide. And out of that clash, bam! A whole new identity and a new set of rules are created. So here's our game plan for figuring this out. First, we'll look at the stories of transformation. Then we'll get into meeting a mysterious God. From there, we'll piece together a divine profile, see what that means for the rules of engagement, and finally, trace it all to the legacy in law.
All right, first up, stories of transformation. Before we get to the wrestling, we've got to set the stage. And it's important to know these aren't just random events. They're all deeply connected, part of a much bigger story.
This whole narrative is a real roller coaster. It kicks off with Jacob being absolutely terrified of his brother Esau. That fear leads him right into this mysterious all-night wrestling match. After that, shockingly, his meeting with Esau is peaceful. But then, just as things seem calm, this incredibly violent act of revenge by his sons shatters everything. The whole arc ends with God stepping in and giving a direct command, basically a course correction, telling Jacob to go back to his sacred place. Okay, so that brings us to our next part, meeting a mysterious God. We have the story, but the central question is obvious. Who or what did Jacob actually wrestle? One thing's for sure, from the text, this being was anything but distant or abstract. What these stories show us is a God who is incredibly present. This isn't some far-off deity sending messages down from the clouds. No, this is a God who shows up, who can be physically grappled with, and who is an active character right in the middle of all the drama. And you don't have to take my word for it, the proof is right here in the text. After the match, Jacob himself names the place Peniel, which literally means face of God. He's in total awe that he survived such a direct face-to-face encounter. It totally confirms that his opponent was physical and immediate.
So if this God is so present that you can actually wrestle him, what else do these stories tell us about his character? Let's try to build a profile based on what the text reveals.
First thing that jumps out is that this being is powerful. And we're not just talking about the physical strength to dislocate a man's hip with a simple touch. It's the authority to completely redefine who someone is, to rewrite their entire destiny. And the ultimate display of this power is the name change. He's no longer Jacob, now he's Israel, which means one who strives with God. Just think about that. His entire identity, forever, is now defined by this one struggle. But this isn't just random, chaotic power. It's also faithful. The text makes it clear that this power is tied to promises made a long, long time ago to Jacob's father and grandfather. Check this out. In his moment of absolute terror, right before meeting Esau, what does Jacob do? He holds God to his word. He basically says, hey, you said you would do this. He's reminding him of the promise. It shows this relationship is built on a covenant that God is expected to keep. And God keeps that covenant by being actively present. Again, he's not watching from afar, he's intervening. He's giving direct commands like, arise, go up to Bethel. And he's making his will crystal clear. And this active presence also shows up as being gracious. We're talking about unearned favor. You know, Jacob started his whole story with deception, so he's deeply aware that the good things in his life are a gift, not something he's earned. And you can just hear it in his own words. When he finally reunites with his brother, Jacob doesn't take credit for his large family, for his legacy. He attributes it all directly to God's graciousness. So this is the crucial part. How does this divine profile, powerful, faithful, present, and gracious, actually translate into rules for living? How are people supposed to act in response to this kind of God? Well, the stories lay out two clear sets of principles. First, there are rules for your relationship with God. Those are all about obedience and exclusive devotion, like when Jacob tells his whole family to get rid of their strange gods. Then, second, you have the rules for how to treat other people. And those are all about seeking peace over fighting and condemning the kind of violence and deceit that we see in that awful Shechem incident. Now, let's connect all these ideas by looking at the most tangible outcome of that wrestling match. Let's see how this one dramatic event creates a lasting physical rule that shows up in the everyday life of the community. You can see this perfect chain of events here, a clear cause and effect. A supernatural fight leads to a very specific physical injury. That injury, Jacob's permanent limp, serves as a living, walking memorial of what happened. And that memorial gets turned into a permanent dietary law for all his descendants, forever linking this one historical event with daily life. So what this all tells us is that in this narrative, who a people are is completely inseparable from their history with God. The fight at Peniel didn't just give Jacob a limp and a cool new name. It forged a brand new identity for an entire nation, Israel, and it established a rule that would forever remind them of that foundational struggle.
And that leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? This story shows a direct line from a personal struggle to a national law. So it makes you wonder, what foundational stories, what wrestling matches from our own collective pasts, both big and small, are still shaping the unspoken rules and the very identities we live by today?